Well, okay, so what's your experience? Have you experienced the fourth jhana, and do you feel that joy goes away?
I'm not sure if I've experienced the fourth jhana or not. It's difficult to say based on so many different standards of what it is and definitions. Based on my most profound of meditative experiences, at first there's ecstatic experience of joy or whatever in the body and the mind, in my experience, and then a kind of cool, tranquil bliss of the mind, which is incredibly more blissful than the previous joy that was experienced in the body. And then it's hard to it's not, I wouldn't call it joy anymore. I think it's right, because it's so much less gross, and it's so much the mind becomes so much more still that it's not. But it's the mind, in my experience, becomes more powerful and more still at the same time, and cooler, if that makes sense. It feels like the agitation is like disappearing.
I think that's a very good, lucid description that suggests that you've had some personal experience with jhana, right? And I agree with you. Now, I personally agree that what you stated is that for you, as you progress through the jhanas, they become more blissful or more ecstatic. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say more ecstatic, because to me that kind of implies some kind of more agitated state, though blissful. To me, it might just be terminology. When I think ecstatic, I'm thinking like I'm like pulsing with joy, movement. But as you progress, I feel like the movement goes away, and it's more blissful, but in a it's also more subtle and more profound.
Well, I think again, since this is really we keep coming back to language. All this is being expressed in language. It also is being expressed, and I think you'll agree that a lot of these people who are, let's say, very well-known, highly respected interpreters of Buddhism may actually only be intellectuals about it and may not actually have the direct experience, right?
Some, certainly, it's possible, yeah.
Right, okay. So, and of that, I believe the community of people who have direct experience with these ecstatic states are generally not being listened to. It's mostly the intellectuals who are being heard and not the rigorous contemplators, for some reason. Don't you think? Or maybe not. You might not agree with that.
Well, I know, for example, at mainstream Buddhism in the U.S. is going to be like Goenka, IMS, and in my experience of both those places, at IMS, no one ever brought up jhana once at all. But I do know that they have had, I think, like Pa'ak there doing jhana retreats. So for me, my retreat, I guess maybe it was like a youth, 18 to 35 retreat or something. Maybe that's why. But so I guess they do talk about it. Or they bring teachers who do at least. But at Goenka, they certainly didn't talk about it. If so, it's either to be ignored, or he said something in his recorded video that we watched about how the jhanas were he said Buddha practiced the 8 stages of samadhi, but they're lost now. They don't exist anymore or something.
Interesting.
So I was just like, what is he talking about?
Well, okay, so the point that I guess I'm getting at is we've got Buddhism being expressed in English, and we have some questionable terms. And how can we know whether somebody is really knows what they're talking about. And I think that if the individual is a rigorous contemplative who actually has the experience of these altered states, then we can say, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. Whereas most of the translators are scholars and are not even contemplatives. Okay, so so now let's go to sukha, the question of sukha, right? Or the question of piti, actually, not sukha. A lot of people say that bliss or piti disappears at some point along the way. Now the problem is that piti happens to be the fourth of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And to me, the 7 factors of enlightenment is a list of what is going to be present when an individual is enlightened. And if that's true, then bliss has got to be present through the whole package, right? Now, sukha is not on the list, but vipassana or insight is not on the list either.
Well, so just a couple things about that is, one, isn't there, I think one of the attainments is the cessation of perception, right?
That's how it's being translated.
Supposedly, right? So apparently a state that has no content,
that's the interpretation, is
have
that
to
we're
assume that
looking
there's
for
no
a void
bliss.
state. That the whole interpretation of Buddhism is the trajectory of the Noble Eightfold Path is supposed to lead to a void state. Annihilation of the self and a void. And dukkha nirodha is the term that's being translated as a void state. The thing is that's a complete misunderstanding. Nirodha is liberation. It's not a state. It's not an altered state of consciousness. So there's a couple of suttas that you know, there are numerous interpretations of what samasamadhi is throughout the suttas. Sometimes, as you know, samasamadhi is described just as the 4 jhanas. That's the most common. And, you know, we're going to look at it as a pyramid. The most common description is just the 4 jhanas. And then, in a few places, we have 8 samadhi states, 4 jhanas and 4 ayatanas. And then in like 2 or 3 suttas, we have 9 things described together. And it almost suggests that, or is the Buddha talking about 9 stages of samadhi? But, and I've even interpreted it as 9 stages of samadhi until I finally realized it's not 9 stages of samadhi. He's showing how the 8 stages of samadhi lead to liberation. That dukkha nirodha, or whatever term it's, let me get the term actually. It's sanya vedayita nirodha. Okay, that's the term that's used in NN 26, and it suggests because it comes right after the 8 stages of samadhi. It suggests that it's another samadhi state. But I don't believe it is now. I now realize that what he's saying is that after traversing all 8 stages of samadhi, you get to complete and full liberation. It's not about getting to a void state. It's about being completely free of all, you know, dukkha or all neuroses. No neuroses is left.